Caddis Maximus here. I'm going to do another Ratchet focus video because these are actually kind of fun and people do, or at least some people do seem to like just a closer examination on specific vintage Ratchets. Bonney was a company that actually was founded in 1877, and in 1925 they had advertised using chrome vanadium steel, and then more public 1923. Then in 1925 they had some real advertising chrome vanadium steel. They had wrenches that were guaranteed to round or break the fastener without damaging the wrench. And really, there were some other companies, Herbrand and a couple others, Plum, that were also using alloy steels and may very well have been using chrome vanadium. But Bonney was really who pushed it and really helped popularize it. And it turns out nearly 100 years later, chrome vanadium steel really was the tool steel. And then, they got bought out by Utica somewhere in like the 50s, and then the 60s they were bought out by another company who also bought out, Herbrand and several others, and actually built a huge factory, I believe, in South Carolina. And it was one of the largest tool foundries in the world at the time in the mid-1960s. And then eventually Cooper Tools, which is the big conglomerate now, or I think they joined up with Danaher, bought them out and ended the company in the 90s. So there is no Bonney that would be made after, say, the mid-1990s. A little bit difficult to find out when they were shut down versus when they stopped selling stock. This is definitely a little bit later model. It's a little bit cruder, I would say, than some of the others of the relative vintage I have here. We got a Proto, which had a really small head and actually a unique symmetrical twin pawl design. And we can see the Bonney is just it's a bit bulbous. What's really interesting is this huge reverse lever. If we compare it to, say, the SK here, which was the round head ratchets that people know the best, but I did a comparison of this against the powr-Kraft 100 series, and we can see that these Duro ratchets were actually significantly better than the SKs, and even the Protos were. And that was kind of the thing I wanted to look at this Bonney. Because I noticed it uses a unique design, and it's kind of neat with these old tools to kind of go on the adventures of everybody's reinventing the wheel, a ratchet, and they all have different takes on it. This is also interesting because it has a separate collar which provides a separation from the handle to the actual ratchet lever to really guarantee that it's not going to have any self-reversing problems. Self-reversing can happen in some ratchets where you're ratcheting, it's just right at the right point, and it kind of drags the reverse lever with it and then inadvertently reverses itself. And that was something that was a bit of a challenge, and so Bonney did that separation. And we'll have to say that it's a bit loose, and so I'm going to put a snap ring in there versus this coil ring just to tighten that up. So I was a little bit disappointed. Come on now, it was kind of obvious that at least when they made this, it's not a bad ratchet, but it is quite coarse. The knurling didn't come out quite the best. And even the stamping, if we actually look here, we can see, maybe this way, that it wasn't stamped exactly perpendicular to the wrench. So it was a little bit offset when they put it through the roll stamp. So it was being made a little more hastily, which was kind of disappointing because my first experience with Bonney was actually this kind of rare 12-point metric quarter-inch short well set. Really hard to find the set, and I can't believe I found it in Bonney. And they just had this super deep chrome finish, really like their sockets. But these ratchets, which are going to be from a similar era within a decade, I'm sure, maybe a couple decades, just doesn't quite have the same feel. It's pretty high quality. It has a really nice high protrusion on the ball detent, but the spring just isn't. It's pretty good. It's a nice fit, but it isn't super strong like you would find in these old Duros or Snap-ons or something like that. I will say I'm going to do another video like this little cow here has a similar kind of setup with a separate ring. So that's kind of this is a 3/8 ratchet. I do like it. I should mention, though, and I completely forgot in the first 4 minutes of this video, that this huge oversized reverse lever is, quite amusing compared to all these other ratchets. The Wizards of the Duro remanufactured or custom-made Wizards are still my favorite because that thin handle kind of missed the thin handle era. But it's just almost comical, but it's super easy to hit. This is probably going to be the easiest to reverse fleck or round head ratchet that you'll ever find. The only thing that's easier to reverse than this would have to be a pair head ratchet with its switch. But this thing is just super easy. You can just get on the side of it. Almost too easy. It'd be pretty easy to bump, but it has a nice detent, and I do like that. I do appreciate that a lot. I just worry about this falling on the concrete too much and maybe breaking apart. That is steel, but nonetheless, it's just really kind of hanging out there. But man, just a really nice, super easy action just to be able to reverse that. And what's also nice is that the head, it doesn't seem to really want to get stuck in the middle position and then to have the head spin around. It really does want to just reverse. So even though it's not that pretty and a little bit loose, it's operate, and it's pretty coarse tooth. This is going to be like a 30 or 36 tooth. It does operate well, and I do like that. Let's take a look inside. These little spring clips are always kind of fun to get out. They're usually not too bad. There's usually a little notch like this one has, which gives you the ability to get a little screwdriver in there, kind of get it started, keep it from wanting to spin around too much, and just get that first lip over the edge like so. Whoop, don't let it fall back in, and then kind of just follow it around until it wants to finally release. And so they have to put a lot of extra space when they use these. Like the Duros where they're flush fitting, this protrudes out because it's a simpler, I should say, easier manufacturing process than doing the whole counterborn undercut, but it just makes for a looser fitting head. We'll see if we get any parts flying out of here. Not too bad. It just has a straight broach. Definitely pretty coarse, but the wear looks just fine in this old ratchet. And then here we have our whole mechanism. And even though this ratchet mechanism is coarse and I like the Duros, what I am seeing here is it's a symmetrical twin pawl design, each having triple teeth. We can see that the manufacturing quality is really pretty good. Those are nice square pawls. When we're rotating them, they're going back and forth, and they do it symmetrically like so. That's a pretty neat system. And to tell you the truth, that's really strong. There's no doubt about that. That's just twice as much engagement, and it's exactly evenly balanced within the ratchet head. So how this works is the backside of these pawls, and I like in the powr-Kraft ratchets, it's always a bear and a big risk of losing the little parts, but this reverse lever is just a whole cast piece with a little nipple on it, through drilled, that has ball detents on both sides, and then there's a little half moon in the back of these, so when you were going back and forth, the two detents are just activating each set of pawls simultaneously. And since they stick out a little bit, this whole piece here is a billet piece of steel, and so it's just catching on this lip right here, and that's what keeps this from wanting to pull out. So no screws, and it's a real positive retention mechanism. And I'm kind of dumbfounded. This is actually one of those things where you'd think, oh, it's a pretty good ratchet, but it turns out, as far as the vintage ratchets I've taken apart, this has got to be one of the physically most heavy-duty mechanisms. And the way this is machined to the bore, each one of these actually acts independently. So for one reason, one has a bit of grit under it or doesn't fully engage, the other side will still engage, and the ratchet will just still operate normally. But you just have this huge amount of strength with just having all that engagement. This absolutely shames the SK. Okay, found myself a perfect size snap ring. This would be an external snap ring, where the tabs are on the outside that fit around this, and this will really tighten up the head over that spiral string. And always gives me an excuse to bust out the snap ring master set. As far as any master sets are concerned, snap ring ones can be real handy just so many times. So in conclusion, you know, it's not as compact or fine a tooth as a powr-Kraft, but is definitely heavier duty, and even the powr-Kraft is heavier duty powr-Kraft Duro than the SK. And this thing, that actually is a surprisingly overbuilt ratchet mechanism in this round head. That's actually overbuilt enough where you might worry about splitting the head, and I wonder why the head was actually just kind of seemed abnormally thick. And it's because they actually made this, if they were going to do anything with the ratchet, it was not going to fail or strip out. I mean, this thing, you could just strip SKs all day long with this Bonney. And compared to the proto, and I'll do a video on this proto, I think it's going to be stronger than the proto mechanism, which is also a twin pawl design. But that's always the fun of these videos. You know, you go through these ratchets and you end up with something like this, which you think is pretty neat, but is going to be like similar to everybody else's, maybe some subtle differences, but it turns out that it is just way superior in many regards. Works reliably, and you're not going to have to worry about it stripping out on you. I mean, quite frankly, that double pawl mechanism is like the ultimate cheater bar ratchet mechanism. Just super duty. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who went on another little ratchet adventure with me, and everybody who has subscribed to my channel. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.